This is a Realistic Minimus 7, and this is a Realistic Minimus 77. It's bigger, so it needs an extra 7. These are sort of notorious in the vintage audio community for being difficult to repair. Now, that is true, but not for the reason that you would think. It's an easy fix if you have the parts. Fortunately, there are finally parts easily available to reliably fix these. So today we're going to repair them and take a look at these cool speakers from 1991. I found these at AudioThrift in Palm Desert and was really excited because they matched the Minimus 7s that I already covered in a previous video. They're even the same white morph. When I saw them initially, I didn't actually remember that they existed. I'm sure I saw them somewhere in the catalogs when I was researching the other video, but it didn't stick in my head. They're the same all aluminum construction on both the body and the grille as you find on the Minimus 7, and the rear terminals use similar push-button bare wire connections. I'm not in love with this style of terminal, but I did try using these little pin plugs recently and they're a lot more secure. The metal grille is easy to remove with a pick or a bent paper clip. Just pull from the edges and it should just slip off to show... Well, that's not good. The foam's rotten. It's gonna need to be replaced. Gross. Now, I knew going into this that these were probably gonna need to be refoamed. In fact, I kind of assume every secondhand speaker I find probably needs new suspensions. Foam likes to rot after 30 plus years. And that's always a really easy fix because you can usually just buy a new set of suspensions online for less than 20 bucks. I assumed these would be no different and just took them home. Once I got them into the sunlight, it was pretty obvious that they were rotten even without taking the grills off. So I went online as we drove home. Don't worry, my wife was driving. And according to a lot of the forums, there is no replacement for the foam on these. Apparently nobody manufactures an exact replacement for the surrounds. In fact, there were several people explaining how to glue two different size surrounds together to make one that fits just to get them working. I'll tell you right now, that's still technically true from what I can tell. Nobody makes an exact replica of this speaker suspension. But how fortunate we are to live in such times, because as of writing this script, I managed to find 3 different speaker suspensions online which are at least an adequate size to replace the original foam without any modification. And I ordered 2 of them since it looks like the ones that I found in Australia were the same as the ones that I found on eBay. I bought these from a company in the Netherlands called Speaker Repair Shop. They're not specifically advertised as fitting the Minimus 77, but the inner and outer dimensions are really close. These I found on eBay. Someone on a forum said that the Optimus Pro LX5 speaker uses the same size woofers, so a refoam kit for that would supposedly work, and I managed to find one for a little over 10 bucks. I've sloppily installed one of them as an example. Looking at the foams versus the original, it's not an exact match. They look different. In particular, this nice rounded part that fits perfectly between the outer diameter of the cone and the paper doesn't translate to the new suspensions. I think it looks okay, but it's not the same as the original. This is the one that I got from eBay. It fits a little differently and is a bit smaller, so it's not a perfect match either. It's also quite a bit darker than the other one, but since I can't tell what color the original was at this point anyway, I'm not going to worry about that. So let's just get this foam replaced. Now, I'd like to do a little audience participation bit here. What I'm going to do is install this foam that I got from eBay, and we're going to show what both versions look like side by side. And I want you guys to tell me which one you think looks better between the two. Later, I'll go in and replace the other speaker with the one that you guys like best so that they match. The first step is always to remove the speaker from the housing and disconnect the wires. Each spade connector is a different size, so don't worry about keeping track of which one went where. Once it's out, you can knock all the old foam remnants off into a trash can. One important note, the foam is attached to the back side of the cone, so we're going to want to attach the new one in the same way. This paper ring is mostly cosmetic, but it's an important part of the look, so you want to very carefully pry it up so it doesn't bend. You can iron it if it gets creased and that'll flatten it out, but that is an extra step if you can avoid it. Then you want to flip it over and clean it off with whatever you can. Next, you're going to want to scrape the old foam and glue off the basket. Use whatever you can, but be careful with stuff like acetone because it can damage the insulation of the voice coil if it drips. I used a little alcohol, some acetone, a scraper, and some little sanding sticks from Amazon. Next, you have to remove the gunk from the speaker cone. That was actually the easiest part. The gunk came right off just with the dental scraper. You just have to be very gentle because the cone is a relatively thin paper material. Once everything is clean and dry, you're ready to hook on the new foam. The easiest way that I've found is to flip it over and apply a nice thin ribbon of 30-35 glue to the edge of the speaker cone. This stuff takes a few minutes to dry, so you have plenty of time to make sure that it's evenly coated. Then you can flip it over and attach the foam to the back of the cone. Try to avoid getting much glue on the visible part of the foam if you can help it. Once it's centered, press it down and let it dry for a few hours. Then you can come back in and apply a nice thin bead of glue to the basket under the outer edge of the suspension and press that down. I usually wait about 10 seconds and then go in and start centering it by gently pressing on the center of the cone to make sure that it doesn't scrape. This one didn't. If it does, you can usually feel where it's scraping, so I'll just gently nudge it over until it moves smoothly. This is a small cone though, so 99% of the time it won't scrape and it'll be fine just as it is. Inevitably, you'll probably have a little bit of glue that's visible on the foam or the edges, which you'll be able to remove just by gently rolling it off with your finger or using a tweezer. Don't use alcohol because it makes these foam surrounds swell dramatically. I'll show you an example with this extra one from the Bose 901 refoam I did a while back. See how it immediately goes out of shape like something from an 80s sci-fi movie? Here's a side-by-side of both of the foams. Which one do you guys think looks better? Leave a comment down below, and whichever you guys think looks best, I will leave in and swap the other one out. They sound pretty much identical, at least I can't tell the difference. That said, we're not done. The tweeters sounded really weak and muffled. That's a classic symptom of a bad capacitor, so those had to change too. These, like a lot of lower end speakers, use a 4.7 microfarad electrolytic capacitor. That's one of two extremely common values that you find on cheaper speakers. In fact, my next video is going to cover another fun realistic speaker that uses the exact same value. So I just went ahead and bought several of them. The other value I see a lot is 3.3 microfarads, so I picked up a few of those too. This is the crossover. You have an inductor and a radial lead capacitor which has been glued down to the base. Now, most speaker capacitors have axial leads, which means one sticking out of each end. This one has them both sticking out of the top, or the bottom. That presents a little bit of a challenge when changing the capacitor because I don't want it to hang loose in the cabinet. So I did something a little unorthodox. The original capacitors are glued down pretty securely, so I actually used them as a little platform to attach the new ones. I disconnected the old leads, of course, and then clipped them off so it was nice and flat. That way, I can dab a little hot glue on and attach the new capacitor right on top of it, and it won't jiggle around or vibrate. See? It's like a little shelf. These are non-polarized capacitors, so they have no positive or negative terminals and can be oriented in either direction. They're also rated at 100 volts, which is the same as the old ones. You want to make sure that the new caps you use to replace the old ones have the same voltage rating or higher, so you don't risk blowing them up. I'll put everything back together so we can take a quick look at them. I started this video a month ago and got halfway through when the capacitors ended up on back order and it paused everything. That's one of many reasons I was so late with the last video. I had to scramble to make it at the last second, but there we go, all back together. So these are a two-way bookshelf speaker from 1990. These are from 91. They came in black or white and retailed for $79.95 each. The catalog claims a 60 watt rating, but the sticker on the back claims 55 watts. There's a basic bracket for mounting them on the wall with just a nail, but there are also 4 tap screw holes. That's where you would have attached an optional mounting bracket, which was sold separately for $19.95 a pair. I wasn't able to find a pair of brackets by themselves as of writing this video, but I did put a saved search on eBay for them because I love having the accessories for this stuff. So now let's demo these because I'd like to show you how the Minimus 77 sound compared to the smaller Minimus 7s. I'm just going to play something from the YouTube library. They have a noticeably richer sound, at least in person. The mids are much less harsh than the smaller 7s, although the actual sound doesn't really come across in the video. The crossover components on both have the same values, and the tweeters look nearly identical, so the only real difference is the slightly larger woofer. This line also has an even smaller Minimus 3.5 with a single 3-inch driver, so I want to try to find a pair of those at some point as well. And the System 7 receiver that went with these, which I just learned about recently thanks to one of your comments. Before I go, I'd like to thank one of my viewers, Dylan, for the email he sent me. He did a full custom upgrade of a Yamaha K350 cassette deck. He converted it from a 2-head to a 3-head, added a monitor function which he modified from a Walkman, as well as fully upgrading the capacitors and the motor and a bunch of other stuff. So Dylan, thanks for the email. That was a really fun read. And thank you guys for watching. You guys rule. Stay metal.